everybody, very exciting news. Australia will be opening its borders to basically everybody as of the 21st of February 2022. It has been the longest border closure and border restrictions ever out of all the countries, I think. We have closed our borders to the entire world for the last 2 years essentially. So this is a big deal. They have opened the borders slowly. So previously they'd opened to family members of Australian permanent residents and citizens. Then they opened up to certain work visas and student visa holders. And now they're opening up to basically everyone. The only condition is that you must be double vaccinated and the vaccination must be approved by the Australian government. So today let's talk about some of the visa holders that are allowed to travel into Australia. Some of the requirements you need to know when traveling to Australia, such as, filling out an Australian travel declaration form and all the little things you need to be careful of. We'll also talk about some of the visa requirements, such as tourist visas. And everyone's probably wondering, will their visa be approved now? Will their visa be processed now? Well, what happened previously when the borders closed and everything happened, people had lodged their tourist visa applications or student visa applications and, the borders closed and so many things went wrong. I think what the department actually did was they moved a lot of their team who are processing, tourist visas and things like that to another team, to another section of the department to process other sorts of applications, such as onshore no further stay waivers and things that needed to be dealt with then. However, now that the circumstances have changed, they're probably moving the team back over. So you can probably assume that tourist visas, student visas, all those applications will be back to processing as normal. I think some people have told me that they lodged their tourist visas 2 years ago and they haven't heard anything. I think that's just all been put on hold. So now they'll be going back to it. So as of the 21st of February 2022, as long as you are an Australian visa holder, you can travel to Australia. Now, there was some confusion about this, such as whereas bridging visa B holders can travel to Australia. However, the idea is that if you hold an Australian visa, you can travel to Australia. So a bridging visa B is an Australian visa. Anyone who holds an Australian visa can travel. Now, there's a small section that says, if you've lodged a visa and it hasn't been approved, then you're not a visa holder. And yeah, that totally makes sense. So if I've lodged a visa and it hasn't been approved, then I don't hold an Australian visa. So I can't travel to Australia. And that's always been the case. As long as you hold an Australian visa, you can travel. Now, before I jump into some of the requirements for entering into Australia, I just want to talk really quickly about those who hold bridging visa A, bridging visa C. So if you're currently in Australia and you hold a bridging visa A and you want to travel back home, that bridging visa A doesn't have re-entry into Australia rights. So that's why you hear people saying, I've got to apply for a bridging visa B. When you're about to leave the country, around about 2 weeks before, you want to apply for a bridging visa B, because that is the bridging visa that's going to allow you to re-enter into Australia. If you leave Australia without a bridging visa B grant and you hold a bridging visa A, you can't come back in. So that's really important. So always have a chat to your agent or lawyer before you go and make any travel. But basically, applying for a bridging visa B can be quite simple, especially if you have applied for your current visa, which is pending a grant, online on your IMI account. If you go into your IMI account, if you go into the application, there should be something that says, apply for a bridging visa. So I think that's pretty simple. Apply for a bridging visa B, explain why you want to travel back, whether it's to see family, to attend, any special family gatherings. You can explain all of that. You can also provide proof of it. For example, if you needed to attend a wedding or something, then you can, attach that wedding invitation. You will also be asked, how long you want to leave Australia for. Generally speaking, when I apply for clients, I just write 3 months, and I think you will normally be granted for 3 months. But when my clients were leaving last year before borders, were open again, they really needed to go back, and they just said, okay, I'll just come back when borders reopen to bridging visa B holders. So what we did in that situation is we lodged and we requested for a bridging visa B for 1 year. because then that gave us more time just in case, borders close again, or, it takes a little bit longer for borders to open. So we usually apply for 1 year. In this case, if you feel pretty safe and pretty happy with, the way that things are going, and you don't think that there's going to be another border closure, then you can generally apply for 3 months. Applying for 1 year is a little bit harder anyway. You need more evidence to explain why you need to be away from Australia for a year, essentially. Bridging visa C holders do not have travel rights. Unfortunately, you can't travel on that visa. So you're just going to have to wait until your visa is granted, whether you've lodged a student visa or a skilled visa. You're just going to have to wait for that to be granted before you can travel, unfortunately. A lot of people also ask, I am a student visa holder in Australia, or I'm a bridging visa A holder in Australia. Can my parents come to visit me? Of course they can, because it doesn't matter, what visa you hold here in Australia. They need to have their own valid visa. So as long as they have an Australian visa, such as a tourist visa, they can come to see you. I think there was a bit of confusion because previously, how there was those rules about having to be a family member of an Australian citizen or permanent resident to be able to enter into Australia. That's a thing of the past. So that rule has been removed, obviously, and you don't have to be, a family member of an Australian citizen just to travel to Australia. The borders are open now to everybody. But yes, you have to be double vaccinated. That's the key thing. So no matter what visa you hold in Australia, and if your family members want to come, they can apply. Generally speaking, it would be a tourist visa. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be granted. You still have to meet the requirements of a tourist visa in Australia. So I've done a video, and I'll leave the link below to all the requirements of a tourist visa in Australia. However, very quickly, the two main requirements is that, one, you have to show funds. You have to show that you have enough money to support yourself while you are here in Australia. Probably a little bit less if you are from, say the UK or the US. Other countries, you probably do have to provide some substantial funds. And I'd say anywhere between $15,000 to $25,000 Australian. So for example, if you had a job that paid pretty well, if you have some sort of assets back home, and if your country, if you can demonstrate that, then generally speaking, you could be granted an Australian tourist visa. The main thing that they look out for is that this person who wants to apply for a tourist visa doesn't just want to come to Australia and then stay here forever. That's the main thing they look out for, and they have their requirements for it. There are certain ages, there's certain countries that they deem as high risk. So if you are from one of those countries, it's very important for you to show that you meet the requirements for a tourist visa in Australia. The processing time of a tourist visa used to be anywhere between 1 day to maybe 30 days, maybe sometimes 6 weeks. Probably that's a little bit less. Now I assume there's going to be a lot of applications. So I think they'll be doing their best to process them because they want more visitors back to Australia. It's a huge economy for Australia. So I do assume that they are going to try their best to process them as quickly. But I can imagine that they would be overwhelmed with applications because Australia's been closed for 2 years. A lot of people who didn't get to go home and have commitments here, their family members will probably be wanting to come to see them. So if you have an Australian visa and you're ready to travel to Australia, these are the things that you need to keep in mind. Firstly, you need to make sure that you hold a valid Australian visa and that you are double vaccinated. The vaccinations must be approved by the Australian government, and there's a list of them. I'll leave a link below. So then you need to obtain your foreign vaccination certificate. Depending on what country you're from, each country has different requirements and their different set of rules, but you need to make sure you obtain your official documentation to make sure that you can prove that you are fully vaccinated. That is so important. Without that, you can't travel essentially. Next, it's really important that you complete your Australian travel declaration 72 hours before your flight. So important. A lot of people actually miss this step. I'll leave the link below. It's a form you have to complete with all the declarations to travel into Australia. So important that you get that done 72 hours before your flight and keep that on you. Next, you do have to prove that you have taken a negative COVID test prior to your flight. Now, there is a certain test that's only accepted. It's called a PCR. I was looking at what the actual word's for. I'll leave the name below. It's very, very long. So basically, for some countries, you would have to get that from your hospital and obtain the official documentation for it, but not any normal COVID test would be accepted in this instance. So when you arrive at the airport, you need to make sure that you have your valid visa, that you've completed your Australian travel declaration, that you have proof that you're double vaccinated. You obviously need your normal travel documents such as passport, and you need to make sure that you meet all the other requirements for the airline. Now, I do believe that different airlines have their own set of rules as well. So when you're doing the booking, make sure that you do check with the actual airline. The other thing that you need to do is also check the individual state. So Australia has all these states, South Australia, Victoria, New South Wales. If you're entering from an international flight, they have their different set of rules. You have to go to the individual websites and check that, because that gets regularly updated. Even what I tell you today could get updated. So you always need to check the website before you fly, before you book, to make sure that you have the most updated information, because it's just a changing situation. There's not much you can do about that. I do believe a lot of states are open now and there's no quarantine requirements. I don't think you can get to Perth though. I haven't looked deeply into this, and there's always new updates anyway. But Perth are not letting people from Perth actually leave Australia at the moment. That's been delayed. So I don't think you can get in. So make sure that you do check that website. Thank you very much for watching today. My name is Tracy Chen. I'm the principal lawyer at Mason Chen Law Group. We do provide all sorts of services to assist you with all your Australian visa needs. I'll leave the link to our website below. Now, I hope you found this video very helpful today. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and share this with friends who need it. And don't forget to turn your notifications on. Australian migration changes all the time, and I always keep everybody up to date on all the changes. So do keep your notifications on so that you don't miss any updates. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.